You're listening to Portfolio Podcast.
No, so it's all done. So I went with a company called Yuri Tours. I tried for many, many years, probably 7 or 8 years to go. And I was constantly told no, that as a photographer it was too dangerous, or it was too dangerous for me, or it was too dangerous for the tour company, that I would be seen as a journalist. And I mean, I'm really not a journalist in the traditional sense. Although I have shot for New York Times and Washington Post, it's not hard news stuff. It's more travel work or things like that. So I wouldn't consider myself a photojournalist in that sense. But still, it was a no. And then when I turned 40, I really worked hard, and I found this company in the U.S. called Yuri Tours, and I spoke to the owner, and over about 6 months, we finally were able to come to an agreement, and she agreed to take me, which was fascinating. So I went in October of 2015 for the 70th anniversary of the Workers' Party, the ruling Workers' Party.
Is that the one with the big
parade and everything?
Parade.
Yeah, I mean, it was unbelievable. So, one of the main things that when I went, I said, that I don't want to lie about who I am. That would be too risky to say. I have too high a profile, I think, too. You just Google me and I come up as a photographer. Social media today, anybody, it's pretty hard. But so I was like, look, I want to go. I am a photographer. I want to bring my cameras, and I want to be honest about that. So.
And how did they receive you?
Well, so it was fine. I mean, this lady helped, Yuri Tours helped coordinate my visa. I really only found out about 7 or 10 days before the trip that I was approved to go. So I flew to Beijing, met up with the tour company there, and you fly from Beijing to Pyongyang. And I was in North Korea for 7 or 8 days, which was pretty phenomenal.
And was it a guided tour the
Yes.
whole time?
Yeah, so you have to be on a guided tour. You're not allowed to leave the hotel and wander around the streets on your own. So we stayed in a hotel. The two North Korean guides stayed in the hotel with us. Not with us in our rooms, but in the hotel property. And they were with us 12, 14, 16 hours a day from when we met for breakfast until we went to bed.
What were you expecting when you were planning the trip? And was it as expected what you found once you were inside or in North Korea?
I guess I thought that when I arrived, I was stopped and all of my camera gear was inspected, which I anticipated. But so they wanted to look at my camera bodies, they wanted to look at my memory cards, they asked me about my computer, they asked me about my hard drives. They took them away, but I got everything back, it was no problem, and people were very friendly on the way in. I learned subsequently, I think, that they were more concerned about what I was bringing in, that I didn't have any type of media, movies or books or anything like that, so that when I come up with hard drives and memory cards and computers,
and they're all clean.
Yeah, so they wanted to check that. When I was there, I was able to shoot freely. I was not told no very often about photographing. However, you have to realize that you're on a very tight tour. I mean, you really only see what they want you to see at the end of the day.
Yeah, and the fact that you don't go around on your own.
Exactly. So what was surprising to me, but in hindsight perhaps shouldn't have been, is that when I was leaving the country, nobody looked at anything. So no one stopped me on the way out. No one looked at it, and I thought
it's not so much what you're taking out.
Yeah,
the images.
Right.
But
more concerned about that you're bringing in, and also I think that the idea is that there's been somebody with you, a government minder, the whole time. You really didn't see anything that you shouldn't have seen per se. So going out was no problem. Yeah, but it was a really, it was a fascinating experience to go and to experience.
Give me 2 highlights of the trip.
2 highlights. I would say one highlight was climbing Mount Paektu, which is the highest mountain in North Korea. It's about 10,000 feet, I believe. It's up near the border with China.
Is that a popular tourist destination?
Well, I don't think it is. I mean, North Korea by itself is not very popular, obviously. I mean, I think only 5,000 Western tourists visit a year. Many more Russians and particularly Chinese visit, but 5,000 Western tourists. So when we got to Mount Paektu, there was no one else there. So we flew, they chartered a Air Koryo plane for us, and we flew a few hours up to Samjian, and then we drove, and then we got out at the base of the mountain and we hiked up, which was crazy. It was October, snow, freezing cold. But when we got to the top, it was pretty amazing. I mean, this old, ancient volcano and a volcanic lake at altitude, which was this crystal blue color, and then across you can see China on the other side of the lake. In fact, I got so close to China as we were climbing up the mountain and we got near the top, my mobile phone, my hand phone vibrated in my pocket. And you don't have any mobile phone coverage in North Korea.
In North Korea.
But I'd actually roamed into China, so that's how close we were. I got I got a
yeah.
Chinese signal. So that was definitely a highlight. Just the topography and the natural beauty was amazing. And I guess another highlight would probably have been witnessing the parade, the military parade that celebrated.
It's spectacular. I mean, the clips that I have seen.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, we were not allowed to be
But
right
you're
in.
there.
Yeah, not right in Kim Il Sung Square. So I couldn't be in the square. That was
Okay.
obviously only military and government and dignitaries and things like that.
Okay.
So we were outside of it, but right on the side of the road, and it was hours long. And you know, I can't even tell you, Mark, tens of thousands, 100,000 people. I mean, just this sea of humanity streaming by you, all waving flags and flowers, and then.
How
and,
far were you from the place where things were taken?
I would guess it was probably a couple of kilometers. So they kind of rolled through the square and then came out. So we, at the beginning, was all of the parade of the people, just sort of the women all dressed in traditional clothing and the men and everyone waving flowers and flags and coming streaming down the road. And then the parade started in earnest, like you could starts coming in military vehicles, and I mean that had to go for a couple of hours, and it was just tanks and aircraft, you know, missiles and aircrafts and jeeps and motorcycles and more tanks, and it was just this cacophony of noise and diesel fumes and cheering, and it was just it seemingly never ended. It was quite a spectacular scene to witness. Obviously a little unnerving too, right? I mean, it's a big military parade. But those are probably two things that I'll never forget from the experience.
If there is a photographer who is planning to do the same thing, meaning go in and take pictures, what would be important for him to keep in mind or prepare for?
Sure. Well, I guess you know, if you are a photographer as a profession, I would strongly advise that you be very honest and forthcoming about that, because you know you could get in a lot of trouble, and you know also the people there, the guides that look after you, they could get in a lot of trouble if they. So that was one of the reasons why it was very important to me to be honest. Number one, I didn't want to put myself in harm's way, but I absolutely didn't want. I mean, I accepted some risk by going. Right, I knew that there was some risk, but I certainly didn't want to put another person, an innocent person, at risk by the nature of me not being honest. So it was very important to me that I was honest. So I would.
And whose task is to look after you?
Yes, exactly. So they look after you for 7 days, and then they get in trouble after. It would be horrible. So that I would suggest if you're a hobbyist, then there's nothing to be honest. You just be honest about your profession and you bring cameras in. But if you are truly a photographer and that is your profession, I would encourage you strongly to be honest about that and find a tour company that's going to accept you and bring you in that way, because you know a lot of people can get in trouble. Number two, I guess, would be you know, you have to be respectful. Western tourists there are not a big thing, and a lot of people don't want their pictures taken. They're not living in a social media world like the rest of us are. They're not living in that environment where, so you know, there's an apprehension on that. And I think this is not just a rule for North Korea, but I think it's a rule for any travel photographer or street photographer, that you have to be respectful of your subjects.
That's important.
It is, and you know, the way that I shoot travel work and street work, you know, I think I rarely ask somebody permission. I will rarely say, Mark, may I take your photograph? Because now we have an association, or I'm taking away the candidness of the moment, or I'm stopping you doing what you're doing. And it's more that I will approach you and I'll raise my camera up and I'll make eye contact with you. And as I bring my camera up, you'll do one of two things. Either you'll just keep doing what you're doing, which is a tacit agreement that you're okay for me to take your picture, or you'll wave your hand or say no thank you. And I think as photographers, it's important that we respect that, and I think it's doubly important in a place like North Korea, but certainly in any aspect. So that's something that I try and practice. So that would be some advice that I would say.
Now you have